parent, you have one job.
Written and directed by Will Canon, we are talking The Confession. And this, I suppose, you could class it as a haunted house movie, although it has much more of a mystery element to it. So what's the story? Well, it focuses on this woman who is a rock singer, and she basically moves into her father's old home in sort of more rural Texas because California was too expensive. She has a young son around 9 years old, and the father looks like he had died some years ago. And she finds a tape of a recording where the father seems to confess to killing someone. And this leads to a twisting narrative of almost like a possession or a haunting, with these kind of elements that will become more apparent as the film goes on, and a variety of different sort of characters are introduced. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. If you like a twisting narrative, if you like a movie with lots of twists and turns and reveals, I think this movie may well be for you. I think the narrative is actually relatively complex. So if you like it a little bit more than a straight A to B haunting house movie, then maybe this is the movie for you. It's not exactly visually sparkling by any point, but it definitely has a spooky feel to it. This kind of dark house, we do see some sort of milder scenes of fear and kind of mild horror, but nothing sort of especially gory or massively kind of scary. But nonetheless, the movie still manages to has this sort of eeriness, this kind of creepy factor. Certainly, I would say in the first two acts of the movie. We do have a few scenes here where I think they're kind of relatively well staged. The movie is quite deliberately paced. It's kind of a slower film, so it's not in a rush to reveal anything too quickly, but as such it does build a good amount of kind of oppressive and creepy atmosphere. I think the performances are all good. I think our cast do a good enough job here. I think the mother is an interesting and compelling character. I mean, she's meant to be this kind of famous rock star, but they never really dwell too much on that. It's just kind of like a almost throwaway detail, but it adds an extra kind of element to it. But you kind of get the impression about what the movie's trying to say, that she's come from a kind of a religious background, and what happened to her, the father of the child, and things like this, and her relationship with friends and things. So I think the movie does a good job of writing a character which is fleshed out, but the performances as well are also pretty solid across the board. I think the movie has this kind of climax that will remind you a little bit of Insidious. Maybe not as flashy as Insidious. There's more. This is more of a dialogue-driven movie than anything else. But if you like movies like Insidious and haunting house movies along that ilk, I suggest maybe you might want to check it out. I mean, it's an interesting idea, and like I said, where the movie's plot is quite expansive and has multiple different kind of reveals as the film goes on, it's a film that will kind of keep you, enthralled in regards to what's happening and where this story might go, because not everything is revealed straight away. It's enough to kind of get you interested, but as the film goes on, you learn more sort of characters are feathered in, and the greater the kind of the threat might seem, because initially it seems rather innocuous. Some might say a somewhat standard, typical haunted house, but this thing at the end of it, the very end of the movie, seems pretty damn powerful. Let's talk about what doesn't work. As I've kind of hinted at, the movie is very dialogue driven and really lacks, I think, a interesting kind of set piece or money shot and things like that. The movie is much more interested in exposition and giving you this kind of backstory through dialogue, and there's a little bit of kind of visual representation when you find certain clues and stuff, but I don't really feel like we ever really saw a whole lot, to be honest with you. Like I said, there is an element here of more subtle horror, creepier imagery, but nothing I would say that is particularly sort of horrific or scary at any one time. And as such, the movie feels a little bit sort of convoluted because there's so much information given to us through dialogue. I think the movie sort of buckles a little bit under its own weight. The finale of the movie, the third act, as I mentioned, kind of feels a little bit like Insidious. I don't know if it completely made sense to me, I have to say. The movie introduces a lot of themes, a lot of kind of supernatural elements, as well as sort of religious aspects of this film as well. And I don't know if it completely meshed. The movie's also a little bit guilty of having a few sort of typical cliche horror things that happen. We see something scary happening, and then the mother wakes up from a dream, and it's just a bit of like some sort of prophetic dream and stuff like that. So it ends up having a little bit of the cliches, so to speak, a few tropes that end up rearing their heads here. But overall, I've got to say it's a competent movie that's well acted, that has a little bit of a complex plot, maybe to its detriment, because I do think this movie maybe gets a little bit convoluted and confused at the end, maybe introducing a few too many elements to it. And I think the ending maybe overstretches. And as I say, lacking a little bit in real visual panache, but still an interesting movie overall, especially if you like a slower burn, more dialogue-driven horror film. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. What were your thoughts? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.